Greetings and welcome to Metaphysical Awakenings with Barbara
and Eric.
We're so glad to have you here today. Welcome to episode 13. Today's episode is When the Mind's Light Declines, Spirit's Light Shines. Brightly, that's yes. Right. Barbara, you were sharing some very powerful information with me as you arrived to our recording location today. And originally I was thinking about starting off with your recent trip, which we're going to get to in episode 14. But this felt more of something that just needed to be revealed now, to be shared now.
Right. It piggybacks what we were talking about in episode 12. Excuse me. We were talking about the event that caused me to shift my whole awareness, which was the passing away of my mother from a car accident. And as I was on my way over here, well, let me back up once. I watched that episode 4 times now, and it's just so very powerful in the messages that have been coming through for sharing about allowing God to come full circle with you and just not holding yourself down in a mud puddle to wallow, but allow your light to begin to shine, because God's going to guide you back from whatever cataclysmic event has just come through your life. And even if you are so angry and you have been calling God really nasty names, God created us. We can't surprise him rather. And it all is forgiven in the big picture of things. But I neglected to tell half of the story about my mother's passing, and it was, I wanted to relay it because it had something very, very powerful behind it that I didn't see until this very day. Can you imagine? This happened in 1991, all right? And here I am thinking about this, and this gigantically necessary information has to come out, and it goes like this. My mother passed away from a car accident in 1991, but she didn't pass immediately. It was a motorcycle that hit just her door. Nobody else was really injured. And I know it's very, very bizarre. And, it landed her in the hospital. In the beginning, she was squeezing my dad's hand. Everything's fine. Now, this is all the way out in Oregon, and we live in Florida. So I was saying, Dad, let me come. I need to come. All of this has taken place just about as far away as it could possibly happen. And Dad's like, no, it's okay. She's squeezing my hand. Yes, no, and things are going fine. Well, things were not going so fine down the road. And my father, who was so amazingly broken over this, could not share with me the truth of what was happening. Apparently, there was a second incident, and my mother had a second stroke. But instead of telling me that, he chose to say, okay, please, I need you to come out now. Let's get you on a plane, and I need you to be here. I'm like, sure, Dad. I've been waiting all week to hear this. What the heck? So, here I am. I'm thinking I'm packing my mom up. So I got a little care package for her with her little cute little yellow robe and her slippers and her little emery boards, because I know her nails are going to be a mess. And, the Jergens lotions, which she always kept her hands so nice and so. Anyway, so I got her little care package packed, and I got myself out there. And I landed, and Dad was right there at the airport, and he did not want to go immediately to the hospital, which was very odd. I'm like, Dad, I want to, no, let's go visit Dallas. Now, Dallas, God bless his heart, had been driving the car when the accident happened, and he was faulted because he should probably not have been driving. But the long story short was the accident happened, and he was at fault. And I think my dad wanted me to witness how broken Dallas was over the fact that this had happened. But see, I didn't have all that information yet.
I piece it together.
No, it made no sense. It just didn't make any sense at that time, but it was okay. I was going to get to that hospital.
It made perfect sense in his mind, though. And now I realize why he did not tell you that information. I was about to ask you that question, but that just revealed the answer there.
Yeah. The long and the short of it was eventually after we prayed as we ate, and before we ate, rather, and Dallas said this most profound prayer and cried through the whole thing. And I'm like, it's okay, Dallas. I'm here. I'm here. I'm going to save the day because I'm going to pack my mom up and I'm going to convalesce her back her in Titusville. That's what's going to happen, Again, not having all the information. I got to the hospital and Dad took us up to the ICU unit, and I walked ahead of him, room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, and I'm like, where are the rest of the rooms? They says, there's only 4 up here, ma'am. And I'm like, well, where's my mother? Room 2. What? And I went back and I looked into room 2. And oh my God, it was her. And she was hooked up to life support. And so many different bells and whistles and all of these things. And as I walked in, I'm looking for my dad. He's not there. And the nurse came in and said, oh, I'm so glad that you're here. We've been waiting for you. The doctor wants to talk to you at 9:00 tomorrow morning. And I'm like, why does the doctor want to talk to me? Dad's here. And of course, again, he was so broken, he couldn't even speak it. He couldn't see it. He couldn't be part of it. He had to handle it in his own way. And the next morning, I was there at 9 a.m. and the doctor basically said, I'm so glad that you came, and you're making the right decision. And I'm like, I'm making what decision is that, doctor? I'm a little in the dark here. I don't know what's going on. Your father hasn't spoken to you about her. No, please tell me. Can you please tell me what's going on? Barbara, your mother has had a second stroke. And her EEG is completely flat. Now in EEG, I'm like, wait, I was a medic. I get it. So what you're telling me is my mother has no brain waves. And that there's no hope. And that, yes, ma'am. And we thought that you would have that information and that you were coming in today to pull the plug. Oh. Pull the plug on my mother. Not wrap her up. Not, get her all ready to go home. But pull the plug on her life. Whew. Anyway, I'm instantly back at my childhood home, sitting on the couch with my mom. After school, I would come home and watch her soap with her, and then Phil Donahue would come on. And there's so many topics, but the one topic that made this situation fall in my lap was that they were talking about people who were put on life support and left there forever. And she says, good grief, Barb. If you ever did that to me, I would come back and haunt you forever. I'm like, don't worry. I won't, that's not going to happen. Don't worry. Well, God dang it. Here it is. Right in my face. And so.
That's so much information being unloaded at one time. Like expecting to take your mom home that day and only to find out that she's on life support. And the doctor thinks that you're ready to make this ultimate decision as far as her life, all in this moment. So, what did you do?
Heck? Well, There was nothing I could do because I had the information from my mother. And he took me back in the room because I wanted to see the EEG from electroencephalogram, which is like a graph that shows you where the brain waves are firing and so forth. And hers was completely flat. There was just nothing there. So she was long gone. And what I had left.
So her body was still alive, but her mind was gone.
Completely, yes. Yes.
And maybe, I apologize if I'm jumping ahead, but we have, and I'll get you tissue in just a second, we have body, mind, and spirit. We know where her body was, still alive. We know where her mind was, not functioning. Where's the spirit?
Exactly. And so, jumping ahead a little bit, I wound up pulling that plug. And she was in really good shape because she walked every single day, little tiny thing. And, my hopes kept going up and up and up because it was 1 hour and she's fine, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours. She's doing, thank you, just fine. 20 hours later, I watched as the machine in her life started to wane. I could see she was leaving me. And all of that hope that I had for 20 hours going, see, she's going to be fine. They've been wrong all along. I'm still here to take my mom home. That was just the most horrible up and down emotional roller coaster that anybody should ever have to go on. But she did pass. And I knew that I had done the right thing. Didn't make me feel any better. That's when I went off on my tangent on really being mad at God and all of that stuff. But the question that you had, with the body, we know the mind, but where is the spirit in this time? And that's what came to me on the way over here today. It takes me about an hour to get over to the studio here to talk with Eric each week. And where did the spirit go? And I was listening and watching, and it was so profound because at the first stroke, my mother, her spirit was in and out, in and out, in and out. The second stroke, when there was nothing, her spirit was already on the other side.
Oh.
She was up and out of her body, and she was already on the other side, kind of getting back used to her light-bodied self. And, she's obviously back and forth because her body was still there. And the complete release of the body and the soul didn't come until her body completely ceased to function on the earth plane. We've seen the videos about how people passed and you can see their spirits lifting and going. Well, that is the final lift and go, but their awareness of who they are before we became who we are for this lifetime, we go back to our original light being self. We don't have to sit in a broken body for however long it takes for it to wane and pass. That was powerful. That's information, my friends and loved ones, that helps us understand, that we go on, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And knowing that, we have to deal with the loss of the physical and the mind, body, and the spirit. It's something we as humans have to do on this side. But the spirit lifts after the body functions have waned all the way down. So
that's a really encouraging thought for those out there who are in a similar situation or the same situation, knowing that even though the mind has gone, the body is waning, and due to our technology now, the bodies are allowed to be sustained. Like, it was still technically alive, but everything else was out. But the spirit lives on, and making that choice to release someone from being hooked up to those machines, that is such a tough choice to make. And I guess it's a little bit easier whenever your loved one has said their thoughts on that.
yes. Yeah, your living will, listen to me now. As individuals, we should already have our living will made out so that when something happens to us, our loved ones aren't left questioning. What do I do? What would she want? I don't know. The living will gives specific instructions. You are not to put me on, advanced life support and hold me here unless there is a means to an end, like the possibility of healing and getting better, by all means. But if the EEG, the electroencephalograms, go flat, for me and in my living will, that's a no break clause. I'm done. I'm not coming back. You're sustaining a body that no longer has its spirit. That's kind of a tough thing.
The idea of discussing one's own crossing can involve a lot of fear. And
Yes.
What I'm hearing from this is, by actually putting it together, that living will, you're then removing the fear not only from yourself but from all the loved ones who care about you. You're all of a sudden giving them the guidance and the permission to execute what your desires are, even though you might not be there, and that causes relief from so much pain that they might potentially go through that process. So even though it's hard putting together a living will, it's an alleviation from fear. It's an act of love, not only toward yourself but toward others who will have to help with that process.
The last thing you want to do is let somebody cross. It's just the last thing you want to do. It's the last thing you want to watch. It's the last thing you want for your loved one. But a living will is a legally binding document that says, I'm in my right mind right now. This is the date, this is the time, and this is what I want for myself. Thank you, amen. And you're right, the burden, because the honest to God, I said it before, but the last thing you want to do is pull the plug on somebody that you love.
Right.
But if that decision is already made by that person, that all that emotional the power of that alleviates that predisposed guilt, which, you have no guilt. There's no such thing as guilt, maybe regret, but that doesn't even come into play because it's not your choice.
Right. Speaking of which, we were talking about the end of life, but also there is a beginning to life that sometimes does not manifest in the ways that we are hopeful for in terms of pregnancies. There's many of those who unfortunately carry out pregnancies that that don't go the way that maybe we expect.
Yeah, we talked about this in a previous episode, and it's this is regarding miscarriages. And another very, very difficult thing to talk about. But when we have a miscarriage, it's important to know that the baby is alive as a human being and growing. However, when the miscarriage comes, Spirit already knows it. This is something that is kind of, I don't want to say preordained, but it's a God thing too. And you have to understand that the spirit and the soul within this baby is not in there. It's not complete. From what I understand and the information that I get, the spirit doesn't jump in until the last minute before being born. All of the anatomical and chemical and biological functions are carried by the mother, and the spirit doesn't necessarily jump in until it's time to ta-da, and they come out to the world, and they are who they are. So it helps knowing that maybe a little when a woman has a miscarriage, that it was a human being, yes, but their soul had not entered necessarily that body yet. And so we are mourning the physical manifestation of a human being, but not necessarily the spirit soul of that being, if that makes any sense at all.
That does to me. That being said, I'm not a woman, someone who, nor do I have kids at this point, so I can only understand from a certain level. And I know there's people out there that, whether they're dealing with, as you mentioned, a miscarriage and might have some personal guilt, like there's something that I did that caused this outcome to happen, or whether it's a loved one that's passing that, like, oh, I didn't do enough to save this person. I mean, is there anything that you could share with our audience?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. When a baby chooses to not come all the way through, it is not a fault of the mother. It is not a fault of the father. It can be spirits sometimes allow, this goes back to blueprints and creating your next life and all of that, and going through the counsel of the wise counsel, and getting ready to come into another life. Sometimes we want to reincarnate too quickly. We pass, we're on the other side, and we want to come back, and we want to come back, and we want to come back, and we surpass the counseling, so to speak, and we choose to say, okay, I'm going to jump right back in vitro. Here I come. Do. Well, as the mother continues and the baby grows, the spirit is able to see what's ahead with the blueprint that they have written out. And sometimes they realize how absolutely overwhelming and hard it's going to be. And so they opt out. They opt out. They never jump in with their soul. They never jump in with their spirit. And because of that, the baby will pass.
They realize maybe that they weren't ready.
100%. Many times. There can be many different things, but that's my understanding from receiving counsel from the other side. So many times mothers are blaming themselves for doing this or not doing that, and this is happening and that happened. It's because the spirit wasn't ready after all. And it just chooses, it chooses to not go with this particular incarnation.
That goes back to the idea of free will.
110%, thank you.
And what I'm realizing is sometimes that suffering comes from that choice of free will. Mm-hmm. But without free will, like, what would be the purpose of life?
Right.
To make these decisions, to grow, to evolve, to
expand.
To expand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, this life is so complex, And we...
Right, yes.
Well, yeah, but we are given so much information that may not be true. It actually may be completely different from the spiritual realm, from what the human realm has tried to put upon us. You see what I'm saying to you?
I think so. As far as truths from the human side compared to truths of the spirit side, those might not always be in alignment.
Exactly. And also, there are times... Well, I shouldn't go back into that, but I will.
No, if you gotta.
There are times when manipulation of the human condition from other people, from generations and generations and generations before, were made to think a certain way, and you have to fit into this box. And look, if you don't fit into this box and you don't do the right thing, then you're going to go to hell and you're going to die and you're going to cause all of this pain and all of these things are going to happen. And it's just not the truth of who and what you are. We're so put upon by other people's stuff that many times we don't think to sit, meditate, and ask for the answers for ourselves. It's there. Knock on the door. It's going to open. God is going to help you if you can't hear for yourself, don't worry. Because those are other people who will lead you to the place where you will be able to. It is once you express your desire to know your truth, you're on your way. But I don't want anybody assuming what you've been told for all of this time to make you feel bad about yourself in your life, in this human condition. I want you to question all of those things. I really do. Is this the truth of me? Or is this something that has been put upon not only me, but my family and the family and the family? A lot of the times, I hate to say, but it came down to manipulating the masses with fear to get the funds.
I'm looking forward to diving into the subject further. That's why I had to take some notes right there. Manipulations of the spirit. That's a real thing here on our human existence, especially on the human existence plane right here. Yeah, that's another big part of to suffering, but like you were saying, just giving yourself the grace to know that, like, I'm here in this moment and I'm doing the best to move forward. Like that's a powerful way of moving past that fear, or at least a first step.
Right. And I want you to be brave. I want you to question. When it just doesn't feel right to you, it's because it's not.
I trust that intuition.
You absolutely must trust your God center.
God's intuition equals God center.
Yes. Your intuition is your direct line to God. You don't need anybody else to help you find your answers. You, me, him, the dog, every living being has their own pipeline to God. And what has happened over the years is we've been told that we don't have that pipeline. We have to go through other people, and then we have to pay those people, and we have to do all of this stuff. And
that was 1,000 years of our history between 500 AD and 1500 AD, whenever the church was our only pipeline of connecting with God. We had to go to a priest and someone who would commune directly with God because we were not able to or not allowed to go to ourselves. And you know what they called that age between the 500s and 1500s?
The Dark Ages?
Yeah, exactly.
Ta-da! Ta-da! But what happens is, from the time when we were put upon and forced into believing one way or being killed, okay, that fight or flight mechanism takes over, and you don't dare cross that line anymore, because you will be taken out of life for it. So now you are conforming to a truth that has nothing to do with the truth of you. All the while, that muscle in your brain that has that direct pipeline, if you will, your intuition is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and goes into stasis.
And whenever that manipulation comes across over many generations, then each generation becomes smaller, 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 smaller. Yeah. I like to think that we are in a reawakening of regaining these direct contacts to source, to God,
yes,
to understanding, to truth.
Yes.
And it's going to take us some time.
It is. This is why we're doing the metaphysical awakenings. This is the whole ball game, folks. We're here to help bring the tools or the understanding or the wherewithal to help each person who listens and wants to open and regain the muscle fitness, if you will, to opening that intuition again. You've had it all along. It's just fallen asleep or been buried because of fear. And oh boy, have we talked about fear.
It's been a main topic for this entirety of this series is recognizing that fear, looking at it deeper, looking at it from up in the higher self, up in that tree that you've mentioned many times.
Yeah.
And then realizing that that fear is not exactly what we first saw it, and reinterpreting that and moving past that. And Barbara, I just want to say thank you for your bravery, for your vulnerability, for sharing what you shared. This is, I can imagine it wasn't the easiest, but you took that step. Your soul knew that you needed to share this, because I think others needed to hear this. I needed to hear this.
Thank you. God brought it to me on the way over. I heard what I recognize as God's voice saying, it's time.
Yeah.
And, last episode 12, reliving all of that was very, very difficult. But that was almost like a liberation, because it was at a point where now we can turn the page. We can find all of the reasonings and the understanding and what the truth of our very being is. And if I can't be vulnerable and honest and human and bring that through, then there's no point of us continuing.
That's right. As human beings, our bodies and our minds are inevitably going to decline. That's just part of our human condition.
Right.
But our spirit's light can continue to shine.
Constantly. Never. You can't deplete your soul. You can't deplete your spirit. That's on God's side.
And that's so encouraging to hear. And it makes this life worth living and growing and expanding.
Yay. I'm happy. I'm happy with what we talked about today. And we don't, unless there's another question or another awareness that you feel like we need to break through, I think we've run the gamut with this.
Right.
And I need to take a breath and get a drink of water, and then we'll move on to the next one. But
this feels right. But before we do that, we got to end with.
Of course. Hopefully we'll get it right.
Prayer for protection.
The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you, God.
We love you all, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.